Hey, what's going on, man?
Let's get this started as I try to remember how this whole thing works.
Rock and roll.
Oh, so we had fun stuff this week, right?
I got promoted.
Oh yeah, I mean I guess there's that too. I meant about
Yeah, it's been an
format.
exciting time for Legends, yeah. And with more excitement on the horizon.
Yeah, I was gonna say formats announced.
Hmm.
The Legends crew is at TwitchCon, but yeah, congratulations on the promotion.
Cheers, thank you, man.
You were recently promoted as well, so this
I
is like
was.
the second promotion.
It is. Our project is expanding by a factor of like 40, so
Well,
there's room for a lot of new stuff going on.
I mean, I can personally say that I've been inspired because
Oh, thank you.
you before, right, at your previous position didn't
Yeah,
really
yeah,
share that you did the YouTube thing. And then
that's true.
you've
That's
left and at your new position you have shared that, and since you've received two
that's true.
promotions. Now
That's
I
true. And our deputy director came up to me actually on Thursday, and he was like, "Hey, Justin, I started playing that Elder Scrolls game." I was like, "Which one?" He's like, "Legends, the one you play." I was like, "Oh, that's awesome." And he's like, "Yeah, but I just keep like playing random cards, and I don't really understand what's going on. Should I watch your videos, or can we talk about it?" This is a
both.
45-year-old man.
Both. I mean, the answer is both.
Yeah,
Yeah. So like I'm not gonna say like I hide it, right? Like I'm not ashamed. I wear like a Charmer sweatshirt sometimes to work on chilly
yeah,
days. My phone case has like Charmer on it, and there's like a couple of people I work with that know, but I don't really like openly share it either, just because
yeah,
of like the nature of the kind of people that I work with. But maybe I need to. Maybe that's the key to moving up
yeah.
the ladder of
Working.
life.
I mean, like before there was just bread on the table. Now there's butter on the bread.
Yeah. I will say this
on, the,
for,
on the flip side of this, though, being like, I have no free time anymore.
well, yeah. I was going to say that on the whole like personal accomplishments thing, in April of 2015, that was the first time that I had ever uploaded a video to YouTube personally.
Okay.
And
Hmm.
I am going to be receiving my first money ever from YouTube. I finally
Congratulations.
crossed the minimum threshold. So,
Congratulations.
I'm basically like a YouTube star now, right? Like,
You
aren't all
are, yeah.
YouTubers millionaires? When do they send me my Lambo?
Right. I'll invite you to the next convention. It'll be at one of Trump's golf courses, actually.
Yeah, I don't think I can make it because I'm supposed to be on Ellen that day, and
Ooh. Trump's not going to like that. I don't know if you know this about Trump, but he doesn't like women.
um, yeah, but he's really like he loves the uh, what is it, LGBTQ community or whatever,
Absolutely. He's very forward thinking and progressive.
he says that all the time. So,
He
so
does. He has the
yeah.
best progression.
So political shenanigans aside, it is the first time that I've ever received money from YouTube, and like I don't know what I'm gonna do with my pittance of money that I'm finally getting. But I was excited. It was good.
Yeah, it adds up. I mean, I think I started the channel in August of last year, and I got monetized in October, and I've made enough money to justify the hobby, to say the least. So I average about. I mean, I guess it doesn't matter. I can just talk about this. The channel up until this last month, when I've had to publish only a couple videos a week because I've been so busy. The channel averages about between 150 and 250, $300 a month, depending on how the videos do.
Mm-hmm.
Um, and I could get more if I put more ads in the videos, but like I try not to be an asshole about that. I just want to be able to pay for video editing software. The costumes are the big one that the expenditures go to when we do those videos, and I'm sure with an expansion on the horizon, there'll be some new stuff coming out there. But yeah, and then I promised Sandra that whatever's left over, like because she's letting me do this, I would spend on her.
Well, I mean, I think that's a fair trade-off.
Yeah.
I just crossed the threshold, so I won't be
Yeah.
making like $100 this first time around. But I was looking
That's
at
awesome.
it, and I've been doing content stuff / Twitch for like over 2 years. But it's
Mhm.
always been a hobby for me, and so I don't make very much. I definitely spend more than I make, and even when I do spend the money, it's almost always on equipment or whatever. So that's what I'm saying. Like, I don't know what I'm gonna do with it because I really need to save for a PC, but I kind of wanted to do, I don't know, something more immediate just to make me feel good about it. I don't know. It'll
I
probably just
understand.
it'll probably just sit in a savings account as I work toward getting a new streaming PC.
Awesome, man. Yeah, I upgrading the camera and the I need headset next is sort of the what I do too. I mean, like, yeah, I figure like if people are willing to watch, I'm willing to put on the best show possible.
So, in the world of Legends, right? We had one
Absolutely.
announcement, one like leak this week, right? So the
Yeah.
announcement was
Where should where should we
the
start?
yeah. I was gonna say like, we'll go with the official one. The Chaos Arena this week is giving people
Yes,
a Wabajack. So while you're drafting,
it's pretty cool.
while you're drafting, you will have a Wabajack that you can use to re-roll your card choices. And what's interesting about
Hmm.
it is that you can sometimes even get stuff outside of your class. So if you're drafting like
Hmm.
Monk, for example, and you use the Wabajack, you might be shown intelligence cards. So
Yeah, I've had a lot of success with this so far, actually. Um, I've done one complete draft so far. I drafted Assassin, and it turns out Sanctuary Raid is crazy in an Assassin deck.
yeah, I'm curious. How much do you think that is like the power of taking a card you normally couldn't put that in that class and putting it there, or how much of your success would you think is based on the surprise factor of people not knowing what to play around because of the potential of out of class cards?
That's definitely part of it, I'm sure. Not assuming, like, for instance, in that case, that I didn't have uh, direct unconditional removal. It was probably a safe bet for them for the most part. But in this case, I just blew them. I blew out like 3 or 4 opponents with it. I also picked up a Blackworm Necromancer in that run, and while it didn't have the same blowout effect, like, it was an amazing feeling to play that card in an assassin deck. um, but to be honest with you, other than those cards, I ended up picking cards that would fit into my deck anyway. Um, I just used the opportunity to re-roll on picks that were like it was really subpar. And in that respect, there is of course a lot more synergy for the most part in the colors you're already in. Unconditional removal is one of those things you just want to grab, though. I love it. I think this twist is really cool. I think Chaos Arena is one of the most skill testing formats that Legends has, and I think this is just another opportunity to. I'm serious, man. I'm totally serious. Look, like, here's the thing. Here's why I believe this, because I have an insane win rate in Chaos Arena, but it's because I spend so much time thinking about this game. I think that because it's every decision you make has to be based on that board, that turn. Like, you're really pushing what like you think is possible. And I think Chaos Arena is a great way to play.
So, listen, I'll concede to you a couple of things. I'll concede to you that I think that drafting for Chaos Arena is marginally a little more intense, a little more thought-provoking, and I say marginally just because you have to consider what are the potential lanes I could see, what are the things
Yeah.
that, like, how hosed am I if I have to swap decks with my opponent, things like that. I'll also
Right.
concede that it certainly will create some more reactive moments, but I don't know if I can back a statement like the most skill testing that the game can
Absolutely.
be when there are things like the zoo lane. I don't know if I can jump on this train with you, Justin. I think
I gotta say the Zoo Lane is sort of an exception to this. I think that even the Wabajack one, I think, like, barring a turn 1 Iron Atronach, I think the player who uses the Wabbajack smarter wins that matchup every time.
I usually think
But
it's
yeah,
whoever
I honestly,
uses it second.
yeah, that's smarter.
Yeah, but you could have just said that, right? And that made it sound it's like super.
Well, I'm trying to
pretentious.
back up my statement that it's super skill testing, bro. Come on now.
I know. I'm trying to help out the new players though. So if you've not
Yeah.
played Chaos Arena and had the Wabbajack thing, sometimes in games both players start with a Wabbajack, and I've personally found it to be significantly more beneficial if you're the player who uses it last, because then whatever effect you do is going to stick. It can backfire, right? Like if you're trying to use it defensively on your opponent and they get an even better creature, then you got to deal with it. But for the most part, if you use it last, it typically benefits you. So,
right. Never use just use it in situations, and this is a good point to talk about actually, because I would say that way more than half of the matches that I play in the Wabbajack, where everybody starts with a Wabbajack in play, my opponent is just dropping their creature and Wabbajacking it, right?
Yeah, that's what I see a lot.
Trying to cheese the match. Like that's not the best way to use it. You will win a small percentage of your games that way, but Wabbajack. So the purpose of the Wabbajack should be to remove enemy creatures that you cannot deal with, and like that small percentage chance that your opponent is going to Wabbajack their turn 1 creature into an Iron Atronach and win that small percentage of games is the percentage of games you're going to lose when you do that to an opponent's creature. But you do it in positions where you would have lost anyway.
Pretty much. Yeah, I see a lot of I drop a guy and I Wabbajack it, and I drop a guy and I Wabbajack it, and it's even worse. Like you're just feeding your opponent free charges, if you whiff, right? Like if you drop your early creature and then you Wabbajack your own, and then you get something that's also subpar, like you basically just gave your opponent a free use of a Wabbajack, right?
Sweet roll.
Yeah. So.
Yeah, absolutely. I will say though that Zoo Lane aside, I really do believe it's the only skill testing format I think that would be more skill testing would be mirror matches, like card for card mirror matches.
Yeah, I mean that's a statement I could get more behind. I don't know if it's just the Zoo Lane though, because sometimes you just walk into, I happen to draft Willpower and I got 2 Imperial Reinforcements, and oh look, it's it's one of those lanes where the lane is 6 wide and the other lane is flanking. So I reinforcements one side and then I give them all
look, Willpower is definitely the best color in Chaos Arena for a variety of reasons.
Sure. Well, and that's why I kind of say I can get behind the idea that drafting for Chaos Arena is certainly different from drafting for traditional Arena and can be more thought provoking, but. I don't know. Maybe I'm wrong. Maybe you're right. Maybe it is the most skill testing, and I'm just maybe that the floor is so low, and that you only have to be marginally better for it to be the most skill testing. Maybe.
I don't know, man. I know that I love it. I play it every time it comes out. I mean, I make the time to play it, and I really enjoy it. Yeah. I will have a video of that assassin run coming out on Monday or Tuesday.
Well, I look forward
but no,
to it.
no Zoo Lane. No Zoo Lane, to be fair.
Oh.
Yeah.
Interesting, tangent thought that I just had. If you could have another lane like the Zoo Lane, but with a different subtype, what kind of lane would you want to see? Do you want to see the Halloween-themed undead lane? Do you want to see, a Daedra lane?
I'd like a Dwemer lane.
Oh, robots.
I'd like a Dwemer lane. Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, I think that would be fantastic, to be honest with you. Because unlike the Zoo Lane, where it's almost always correct to put your creature in the Zoo Lane, it's not always correct, but it's almost always correct. I think that a Dwemer lane would be a lot more there's a smaller range of creatures, right? There's that 6/8 with breakthrough that gives you a 0/3 in your hand every time it takes damage. But beyond that, it's a pretty similar set of creatures, as weak as Black Reach Rebuilder, which is weaker than anything you're getting in the Zoo Lane. So it creates more tension, which I think makes for better choices, which makes for more interesting gameplay.
Yeah, I think it'd be kind of fun to see something like a werewolf lane, mostly because I like the idea
Oh yeah,
of whatever you play being a real transformation. You know what I mean? Like you could
I
call it
do
like
like that.
the full moon lane, and you play something there, and it turns into one of the random werewolves. Now,
I like that a lot.
kind of a shame because most of the werewolves are pretty vanilla. You know, a lot of it
Yeah,
is like in the transform effect where like all of the real like power is, but I just kind of thematically
yeah,
like that idea.
I like it too. And we could just go full stop moron and have it Atronach lane.
Yeah.
But those games would be determined very quickly.
Uh,
But I think a Dwemer lane would be particularly interesting.
I think it would be kind of funny if you had like dual lanes and one is Nords and one is Imperials, right? Like
Oh yeah,
you could really thematically like Shadow
yeah.
Lane, whatever you put there becomes a random Nord, and the other side is a random Imperial, and just go.
Just like turning this game into dice.
Yeah. Well, I mean, to be fair, like that's kind of what Chaos Arena already is, but
Is it?
yes, that's why it's so skill testing, because I'm testing my skill like at the craps table, Justin.
It's Craps a skills testing game? That's funny, yeah. I hear you. I hear what you're saying. And I understand that the Chaos Arena is not for everybody. I mean, I love drafting in general. Like, the opportunity to make an underplayed card into the All-Star in your deck is just one that I live for when I play these sorts of games, so I'm always down for drafting. I would release way more draft videos if they weren't so, like, dramatically less popular than the other videos that I do.
Here's another interesting but like semi-tangential thought while we're just kind of talking about Arena in general. Would you like to see a more like actual draft oriented format? Now I know that our packs are probably not conducive to that because they're only 6 cards, but if they had some
Yeah,
sort of like larger mechanism, because one of the things that I enjoy most about Eternal and Magic the
yeah,
Gathering, for example, are booster
yeah,
drafts, and that
yeah,
whole idea um, of recognizing what's coming your way. So for people who haven't played
yeah,
Eternal or Magic, the way that drafting in those games work is you open typically like a booster pack, and booster packs are like 15 cards. And you open the pack, you take one card, and then like when you're playing in person, for example, you pass first to the left, and you do this for 3 packs. Second time goes to the right, third time goes to the left again. And there's usually like 8 people total at a table, but so the draft experience is part like taking the best cards available and building your deck from those, but it's also in many ways identifying what is being shipped to you, right? So
yeah,
like you can't just like bank on I'm going to get all of the best like blue cards, for example, because you have to identify that nobody else is on blue and that you're going to actually be shipped cards worth your while. Now,
yeah,
it makes it a little bit more difficult in a format like this because we don't have like land, right? There's nothing that signifies a color like there is in Eternal and there is in Magic that can kind of balance things out.
right.
So in my mind, it would almost be like you would draft a pool of cards and then you would have to like only be able to play cards still from 2 colors potentially.
Hmm.
And I don't know what
I
you
can
would
see that.
do. I don't know what you would do if you didn't hit like the threshold though. Maybe it would like autofill with like neutral cards. Like they'd have to have some sort of mechanism, but I would like to
Yeah,
see something like that introduced where it was not just the like, I get randomly shown 3 cards. I would like it to be a little more based. Also, if you're not familiar with those other modes, you get to keep the cards you draft as well.
right,
So
right.
there is also another strategy that I effectively like to call the pay for my draft strategy. So in Magic, this is where
Right.
you don't draft to win, but you just
Yeah.
take all of the rares put in front of you. And it
Right.
doesn't matter if you win or not because you get more than enough value out of your cards for what was spent anyway. So like you do sometimes run into those scenarios, and that obviously doesn't happen in Arena. So I don't know.
That's an interesting question, right? I mean, like, I'm trying to think of how many packs I would need to open, like, I was thinking of sealed, right, as a more reasonable way to do this, and I'm trying to think of how many packs I would need to open in order to build a sealed deck, and the number is like at least 10, right? And then you start to get into like sealed being a prohibitively expensive format for an online game that moves at this pace. Because like while drafting is great, like I do think that you hit the nail on the head as to why it's a problem, right? The packs are 5 cards or 6 cards or whatever, 6 cards, and you're gonna get packs that have no cards in your color that you're like your bombs in your first couple picks or whatever, like potentially multiple packs in a row, right? And so you would need to create either a small enough deck size or a pool of cards, enough packs getting passed around that it's feasible to build a deck at all, which I'm worried just might not be possible. So I'm not sure how you'd work it out, you know?
Well, what if it's not like in-game packs though? Because again, it works a little bit different
Right.
for Magic and Eternal because their just pack sizes are in general larger. But what if for
Yeah.
like this style of format, a
Yeah.
pack, if you
You could
will, right?
you,
Hear me
you
out.
could add 9 common cards to each pack.
Well, no, here's my train of thought. Like one pack would be the
Yeah.
equivalent of one pack of Core, one pack of Skyrim, and 3
Right.
cards randomly distributed from monthly reward cards in Madhouse.
I like that.
Right? Because then you get to
I like that.
15
Yeah.
cards. You
Yeah.
get like a nice even distribution, right? And so we'll call that like one draft pack, and then just like the other
Yeah.
drafts, like you draft, 3 or 4, whatever they. I'm sure the developers could do the math to figure out what would be required there, right? But you do
Yeah.
like 3 or 4 of those, and then like that would be your draft experience.
I like that. That's something I'd be interested in playing for sure. Um, it's one of those things too that if enough, if 8 people were highly motivated to do so, could um, come up with on paper, right?
Yeah.
Or like some kind of internet tool thing. Help me out here, bro. I know this stuff exists. Where random cards are generated. You know what I mean?
Oh yeah,
And
yeah,
then
yeah.
you go through it like that, and then you from your own collection build the decks, and you have friendly matches against each other.
Yeah, I mean, there's existing like third-party tools for Magic that allows you to do that.
There you go. Third party tools. That's a step in the right direction.
Yeah, I mean, I could call them by their name, but like all you need to know is that it's like pieces of software developed independently, and people just take
Right.
the card lists and
Right.
RNG it up and call it good. Yeah, I mean that would be interesting and fun, you know.
I'd definitely be interested in playing something like that. Um,
Heatfire Ash says that Tempo Storm does it for Hearthstone. I was
okay,
not
that's cool.
aware.
TempoStorm.com is where I used to net deck my Hearthstone decks a couple years ago when I played Hearthstone.
Yeah, this is gonna sound like really elitist and shitty, but like I never net decked when I played Hearthstone, but that was because I
Yeah.
was playing it mostly at like the launch and then only ever casually after, and so at launch
Yeah.
those tools just didn't exist.
Yeah. When did I start playing? I started playing when Dragon Priests came out a couple years ago, or yeah, maybe 2 years ago now.
Oh
Yeah,
yeah. With
I played for about 6 months, and I mostly just drafted. But yeah. Anyway, I'm not a huge fan of the game, so
I mean I wouldn't say that I like dislike it. I don't know. It doesn't fill what I need anymore. Like when it first came out, we really didn't have alternatives to play on the mobile platform in that scenario.
yeah,
And
that's why I played it too. Yeah,
even I was gonna say even in the PC experience, there wasn't anything really like it. I mean, you had Magic Online, which I tried for a bit, but I just couldn't. I just couldn't like fight through the client. I wasn't really
yeah,
having a fun time. I didn't really like any of the alternatives. Like I was trying anything. Like I remember trying to play like Soul Forge pretty heavy for a while and things like
hmm
that. But yeah, there wasn't anything like polished enough that like engaged me, so I played Hearthstone because I didn't really have any other options. But I even when I was playing it then, I always felt like it was missing something for me.
Yeah. Yeah, I agree. So, I think we got to talk about this leak. I think we got to talk about this leak for the next format we got coming out.
Oh, for the format, so you don't need to take a bathroom break?
Nah, bro,
All right.
I'm a soldier. I don't
I'm a
I don't
soldier.
I don't get up mid combat
Are you a no limit soldier?
for life.
That's what I told you. Sorry, that's
Uh,
my like 90s coming back to me.
yeah.
Um
Nah, yeah. Yeah. You know, it's funny. I was talking to Sandra. I'm gonna I was talking to Sandra a couple days ago about how before she moved in, like one of my favorite things to do was like if I was upstairs, because we sleep downstairs. But well, okay, we live in a split level house, right? So like
yeah.
our bedroom is on the like underground sort of, right?
Mm-hmm.
And then you can go up to the top. And if I was hanging around upstairs and I had to go to the bathroom, even though like I was relatively close to the bathroom, I found it super satisfying to just like open up the door and pee outside, right? I live in the suburbs, but like, you know, I have a fence. And I was trying to articulate like why this is so satisfying and like why like I just did it all the time. And she's like laughing at me, and then she's like, you know what though, if it was snowing outside and I was you, I'd probably want to pee in the snow too. I was like, yeah. Like I'm glad you're beginning to get it.
Yeah. Well, I mean, she just needs to understand the basic concepts of a werewolf marking his territory,
Yeah,
and like
exactly.
that's just
Yeah.
it. Also, for me, I tend to find that it scares away the strays because they're like,
Oh,
whoa, whoa.
right.
Clearly,
Right.
this is the territory of a man who has nothing to lose. He's just pissing all over his own house.
Exactly.
I'm gonna stay
Exactly.
away from here.
Yeah,
So,
that's how it works. I'm protecting my home.
yeah. No, I mean I live in a bi-level too, so
Yeah.
um, I get
Yeah.
it. I thankfully I have like a half bath like right outside this office, so like I'm sitting here and
Yeah.
then right on the other side is a bath, so I don't have to go far, thankfully.
You know what though, man? Like sometimes it would be farther to go outside than it would be to go to the bathroom.
But you got to mark, like
I mean, I still felt like I had to do it.
sometimes you got to go out and you got to like scratch your back on the tree, claw mark it up.
Yeah, absolutely.
My neighbor's been getting close to my yard. I'm gonna scat on it. It is what it is.
Yeah, this is all part of the werewolf theme because it's spooky week. You know, we're getting close to Halloween.
We are.
So we're talking about werewolf stuff, about marking territory.
And,
This is all that makes sense. This is thematic.
yeah, and leaks.
And
So we
leaks.
should get back to that, right?
The
So
leaks. Let's talk about the leaks.
yeah, Gauntlet mode. Yeah, we don't know when it's coming, but it was supposedly leaked by accident.
Right.
We are expecting a future Gauntlet mode where you play using
Yeah.
only cards from Heroes of Skyrim.
Yes.
No monthly reward cards, no core set, no Madhouse, no
That's
Dark
right.
Brotherhood, just Skyrim.
This is a really interesting one. You know, last week we talked about how block constructed might be the greatest format in existence.
Yeah. And now we're basically getting what'll be like the first, with the exception of like when the game was first released. I guess technically everything was block constructed then. But
That's
we'll be
true.
getting our first like block constructed experience whenever we get this Gauntlet. And it's interesting because there aren't a lot of tools for like existing archetypes the way that you would think. Before we started the stream, but you and I were kind of talking about how Skyrim has a dearth of 2-drops that are like exciting.
Yes. Yeah, you and I spent quite a bit of time theory crafting some decks. And actually, I copied images to those decks, so if you don't mind, I'm going to share the tweet that I tweeted them out in the chat so we can kind of talk about some ideas we had.
Yeah.
Rock and roll. Yeah, you're right. The 2-drop slot is abysmal in Heroes of Skyrim only.
And I'm going to see what we can do here. All right.
I'll be honest. There's probably a simpler way to do this.
No, you're fine. I'm going to temporarily hide your face for a minute.
Man,
so,
lucky
bam!
audience.
So this is kind of what he was sharing, right? So like this is, the shell of a battle mage deck, shell of a monk deck,
Yes.
shell of a scout deck.
Hmm.
And he's also tweeted this on Twitter, which, by the way, if you're not following Justin on Twitter, you should totally do that. And then finally, we've got this warrior build, and him and I were kind of going back and forth about things that we thought would be, potentially viable because, again, like when you think about traditional archetypes, right? Like Ramp Scout, for example, the ramp cards are essentially gone when you go to Heroes of Skyrim only. Like you get the Devil Dragon, as I like to call it, but that's it. And for
Right.
your aggressive strategies, you don't really have a lot of high quality 2-drops.
Right. Yeah, the 2-drop slot is just like void. Mudcrab, Ankle Snapper, and Circle Initiate are the like only playable like reasonable 2-drops, and Midnight Snack.
Yeah. There's also, as we were talking about things to like keep in mind, right? There's no support removal.
Yeah. Right. Then the no support removal thing is huge. We were talking about that. Unfortunately, there is also a dearth of like supports you want to like exploit.
Yeah. So the downside is unless you really want to make like Wolf Cage work,
Yeah.
Dragon Mound once it hits play, yeah, I mean that's kind of it's just done its thing already.
Right.
Um,
But
yeah,
there's some like cards that are just like gonna be best in those colors, right? Like because removal is so limited, right? And this is gonna end up being, I think, like a mid-range slog because like I really tried to come up with something more aggressive than I was able to come up with. You did as well. We talked about it quite a bit. Like it's gonna be like who can find the best playable removal options, and you had some thoughts about where the best removal was in Heroes of Skyrim.
I mean, yeah, I think that willpower, it's all conditional, but it's still the best source of your reliable removal. You have
Yeah.
Grizzly Gourmet, you have Devour,
Yeah.
Sanctuary Raid. No, Sanctuary Raid,
No. No.
excuse me, is Dark
Yeah.
Brotherhood. Arrest, sorry, I knew it was a 7 cost.
Arrest.
Arrest.
Yeah.
So, I mean, you do have some of those options, and the other option that I think is going to see a lot of play, so whether it's the best or not, who knows, but just I expect it to be very popular, is anything with agility, because you'll have Drain Vitality and Sheer Point
Yes.
Dragons.
Yes, absolutely. Yeah, I agree. Devour is going to be clutch. I think Arrest is going to be mandatory because it's the only reason. It's the only one card that'll answer a Skeletal Dragon, which is going to be a huge bomb in the format. I think that Lay Down Arms, a card that sees no play, is going to be a pretty clutch spell for willpower running removal. I'm sorry, endurance decks that need some removal.
It's also worth noting if you're either a new player or somebody who has just never played Lay Down Arms because the card is like pretty mediocre.
Yeah,
If you have Sheer Point Dragon on the board, it
that's
will
right.
outright kill something. So Lay Down Arms
Yeah,
costs 4 and it sets the attack and health of a creature to a 1/1 essentially.
right.
But because it's reducing health with its effect, Sheer Point then does it by an additional -1/-1, so it just outright sets it to being a 0/0 and they die.
Yeah, yeah. I that's a great combo that I'm excited to to actually use somewhere besides Solo Arena.
Yeah. So that is worth noting. But yeah, like the removal options. The other thing to note specifically is that your area of effect removal is also very, very missing in this
Right.
format. No Dawn's
But
Wrath, no Ice Storm, not even like Immolating Blast.
no Odoving. I
You
mean,
know,
there's virtually nothing.
yeah, it is a good time to potentially go wide. So while token decks don't get a lot of their buff cards because you have no 5th Legion Trainer, no Orc Clan Captain, no Divine Fervor, it still might be entirely viable to just go wide. In fact, Justin and I were both talking about how powerful we feel the willpower shout is in a block format.
Absolutely. Absolutely. Yeah, that card is going to be crazy. I mean, even if it doesn't have any synergy with anything in your deck besides Word Wall and Greybeard Mentor, if you're running yellow, like, you should definitely be running Call of Valor.
Yeah, Call of Valor is, I mean, even at level 2, you're paying 3 to get a 6/6 worth of stats, and it's going to be really important in this, like, mid-rangey,
Yeah.
I mean, I think Justin hit the nail on the head. It's going to be a slog, right? It's going to be
Yeah.
battling for board and trying to take your advantage while you can.
Yeah. I agree. And Joe Duda writes, Unrelenting Force will still be a mediocre card. I agree. I don't know that. I mean, in certain circumstances, obviously, like playing for tempo, like dropping that to bounce a creature and then following it up that on your turn with another creature isn't super unreasonable, but like that card is pretty bad, and there are so few cards you can bounce with it that it's awful. Like, we were talking about how Grizzly Gourmet is just like a great card before we started, and one of the few quality removal spells in the format, and then we realized there's like 5 creatures that it could actually hit that anybody's going to play.
Yeah. Because there is no Wordcrafter, there is no Daggerfall Mage.
Yeah. If Unrelenting Force could hit your own creatures, it would be about 30,000 times more powerful.
Yeah, some other interesting things that we were talking about that are probably not going to end up being good, but could be kind of fun and memey if you want to go that route for this Gauntlet when it does come out. Specifically, I really want to see Emperor Titus meme, as I like to call him, see some play.
Yes.
Because, with the lack of quality removal, he is a lot easier to stick on the board and keep there. And giving everything that you're drawing +1/+1 in guard is pretty strong. Even if it's just hitting vanilla creatures, it can go a long way, specifically if they prophecy. So like the thing I was saying to Justin earlier when we were kind of theory crafting is that guy in a block format, if he hits a Mystic Dragon that gets procced off of a rune, it might just outright win you the game. Getting a 5/5 guard with no hard removal floating around in this format to like effectively deal with that is a really big deal.
Yeah, I totally agree. I want to say Tallulah was talking about earlier about lane changing cards and lethal creatures. There is exactly one lethal creature in Heroes of Skyrim, and it is not very good. It's the 2/2 for 3 agility creature that requires you to have another creature with lethal on the board to get a bonus.
Yeah, another thing that I had kind of said would be kind of fun or memey would be you have to survive long enough to like really get the effect from it, but Arrest Mage I think looks pretty attractive in a format like this because of all the flicker effects that you would have. And just taking advantage of things like Conjuration Scholar and making a bunch of Frost Atronox could be fun. Now you have to survive long enough to get there, but right.
And unfortunately, like, well, blue does have access to some removal. It's not great. I mean, this is like, without Lightning Bolt, without Piercing Javelin, without Edict of Azura, without Finish Off, and without Leafler, like, so many cards, like the caliber of threats way outpaces the caliber of removal. So getting to a point where you're doing that cool stuff is going to be really challenging. Hey, Pete Crichton, I have played a lot of High Hrothgar Sorcerer, and I would love to see that list. That is one of my favorite things to try to win with. I think I went 6-3 in a Gauntlet with it one time.
So the other elephant in the room after the last Gauntlet is East Empire Crafter.
Yeah, card's strong.
It's strong, but the question is how strong is it in a Skyrim only block where you have to have enough creatures at that threshold to really trigger it?
Not as strong. That's definitely for sure. You and I were talking about a spell sword list, and then we got sidetracked with Monk because Monk has Sheerpoint Dragon.
Yeah.
But in spell sword, like, you do have the Snowfoot detachment guy that gets bonus when you have more guard creatures. You do have Lydia. Lydia, I think, will just completely shut down some decks if it comes out on curve. You do have the support card that gives you a 0/1 or 0/2 guard for free and gives your guard creatures +1/+0. So there's an opportunity for a deck in Spell Sword that uses that. I think you would put Titus Mead in that deck. I think you would put High Hrothgar in that deck. But without things like, I mean, not to be too memey, but like honestly, Portcullis is such a beating in the High Hrothgar like deck. Like without that, without Lurking Mummy, those two prophecy cards, like you're gonna have a harder time pulling this off.
So speaking of memes, something we didn't talk about before, but has crossed my mind is with the amount of like subpar stuff floating around. How much do you want to play Barter?
Oh, I actually seriously considered it, but then I thought, well, okay, I'll probably end up playing a deck with Barter in it. But I feel like I get enough messages where people are like, "Hey, I couldn't get your ridiculous meme deck to work," that I would just keep the deck lists as reasonable and responsible looking as possible.
All right, that's fair. Because
Yeah.
it won't be good, but I feel like at least mentioning it.
Yeah, absolutely. I kind of feel like Barter is almost playable already.
I
I
once
know
played a hell of a game against Turquoise Link when he was playing that Barter Archer. And
Yeah, exactly. I think you put Barter in a market deck.
it was kind of like that. It was like a mid-range Archer, but he was running like contract generators.
Right.
And I think he was even running Skulk, but instead of the curse package, he was finding some like junk 0-cost card, and then he was using those
Yeah.
to trade with the barter.
Yeah, I agree. I think that would be. I think that's better than it looks. It's as close as you get to like discard in this game.
Yeah, it's just not consistent enough, right?
Yeah, exactly. Duke Wolf Ryan asks, he made the monk deck on my YouTube channel with the tokens. The meta has responded very harshly against the token decks that took over. This is just a bad time to play tokens.
Yeah, unless they are tokens that he immediately charge, that's probably not a good time because people are.
Yeah.
Scout has, I mean, it's still popular, but Scout has kind of waned in popularity a bit, and as it wanes, control decks jump in. So,
right.
I know it's gonna sound weird, but like for the last week, I've played against a lot of mid-range monk and a lot of support mage.
Yeah. Yeah, tokens have been hated out pretty successfully at the moment. It's not that it's a bad deck, it's just not the right time to play it. And I think that tokens are still a great choice in tournament setting. If you can bring multiple decks, I would definitely bring at least one tokens deck.
Yeah, I mean, if it's one of the ones that has the ban option, anytime that you can take an archetype and take 2 copies of it so they can't outright ban it, then that tends to go a long way. You know?
Yeah. I agree. Joe Duty asks, since this format is a mid-range slog, will Restoration Tutor be playable for the clutch value trades? Maybe. I think you might consider it in a spell sword deck running a lot of guards, potentially.
See, I don't personally think that it's going to be good enough because you have to have. I mean, you have to have a big enough creature to make it like worth your time to play a subpar creature to heal it. If that makes any sort of sense at all.
That is true.
Like if my 3/3, you know, like let's say you're playing on curve, right? So like when my 3/3 trades into a 2/2 and then I play the Restoration Tutor and I go back to a 3/3, like was it worth it? Like I know that you're technically getting, you know, like a 3/6 worth of stats at that point or whatever, but is it really worth it for me to play a 3/4 on curve just to like get one extra use out of that 3/3? I'm not sure. And if you're talking about late game stuff, then at that point, like I'd rather just have the late game, if that makes sense. So I don't know.
Yeah, I agree. Restoration Tutor is a card I've tried out quite a bit, and I've just never been impressed with. Even in like self harm like warrior decks using Horkers and trolls and stuff like that, I haven't been able to pull it off.
Yeah, I take that back. If you're playing Raging Horker because it gives me a Raging Horker, then yes, play Restoration Tutor. But otherwise,
Look, Raging Horker is one of the best 2 drops in the format.
I mean, yeah, it's clearly in the top 10.
That is definitely true.
Oh,
I'm super excited about this. I think it'll be great.
yeah. I mean, I think that I almost like enjoy theory crafting for this one more than even like the Popper one personally. You know?
Yeah, I agree. Pauper was solved way too quickly. I think Pauper as a format works in Magic because there are 500,000 Magic cards or whatever. I think that in some ways, the Heroes of Skyrim format might be solved too quickly, but I feel like unlike the Pauper format where there are a couple of cards that are just so much more powerful than others, um, the Heroes of Skyrim cards, like there are some standout cards like Ancano, for instance, but for the most part, they're all about the same power level. Like as far as like what each class has access to, and that's because they all have access to virtually no answers. Like there are a couple big, finishers in each color.
So
I think it'll be all right.
Joe asks an interesting question, and that's one of the things that Justin and I were talking about. So I think this is a good time to mention it. Joe asks, "Will the RNG be tuned for the format? Will Bring Our Nightmares be able to get creatures from other sets?" Now we don't honestly know because it's really everything we know about the format was leaked from an image. But my understanding is that they likely didn't go through and like recode everything.
Right.
And the reason that my instincts tell me that is if you're a veteran of this game, you know that the moment they release a monthly reward card, it's in the pool. Like you can even get
Right.
that from random effects. So if they
Right.
don't even take their time to like keep that out of the pool once it's been announced, I doubt they're gonna limit this to just Heroes of Skyrim.
Yes.
And as a result, Justin and I were talking about how much we wanted to play Battle Mage because we think that there can be potentially a lot of power in using the random effects to just get you cards that would be available from the other sets, right? So things like Revealing the Unseen, Battle Mage's Onslaught, College of Winterhold might have more value in a format like this just because of what they could potentially get you.
Yeah, Battle Mage's Onslaught and Revealing the Unseen are 2 cards that I'm really excited to try out. Those are cards I think that are, well, but Battle Mage's Onslaught in particular, I think is a good card already that just doesn't have a deck that it could possibly work that well in. Not to say, I mean, like, just like with anything, like I've won games with it, but like, you're not going to go on like a 90% win rate or anything like that.
Yeah, no. But I mean, also from the fun factor, and I really kind of look at this one as being the sort of gauntlet that I'm probably going to play more for fun than anything. And from the fun factor, I think that using some of those random cards, it's I mean, it's enticing to me, you know.
I agree, and Tallulah has a good point. Like overdraw.deck. I mean, that is the classic problem that the Battle Mage's Onslaught Revealing the Unseen deck has, is filling its hand up. And I tried to mitigate that, like when we were talking about Battle Mage earlier, when we were coming up with some lists, by including stuff that, like, I mean, like, what's the 2/2 Werewolf with Prophecy? Like that's going into what is like going to function more like a control deck than anything else that I put out. Because like you're going to be able to drop that stuff and then refuel with those cards.
I mean, that's the goal anyway. That's the hope.
Yeah, realistically, we're all just going to get killed by Skeletal Dragon.
Yeah.
No, I don't actually think that's going to happen. But that is why Arrest is in the Willpower deck.
Yeah, I was about to say. So assuming that you can survive to the late game, I think that the other elephants in the room are Skeletal Dragon and Parthenax, right? Because both are going to be your late game cards that, as far as Skyrim is concerned, generate you the most card value.
Yeah, I agree. Yeah, there's not a lot of card draw, you know. I think that I think Elderglee Matron's good. Again, if it can pull beasts or animals from outside of just Skyrim, that would be pretty clutch.
So if you're playing High Hrothgar Scout,
Yeah.
make sure that you consider putting in Eldergleam Matron. Just
Yes.
because, even though stat-wise it doesn't really help you, it doesn't do what you want it to do, it
Yeah.
could pull you the Snowy Sabercat.
That's true, and that is a 7/7 with double strike. Yeah, I agree. I mean, there's obviously some flex up cards too, right? Like, as we see what the format actually ends up looking like, what everyone else is playing, it may be that the deck that hits Journey to Sovngarde is the deck that wins, right? But I think that, I mean, I guess I'm of two minds. Like, on the one hand, I think Dragon Mound and Journey to Sovngarde are going to be good. On average, Dragon is going to be better than what you're putting in your Heroes of Skyrim deck.
Yeah,
But
I think Dragon Mound is legit. Like, it,
yeah,
if it really does end up just being like a mid-range slogfest, if you are ever in a position where you can afford to play it and you don't fall too far behind, it would likely just win you the game. Because you're getting
yeah,
4/4s or better every turn from then on out.
right. Yeah, I totally agree. And the question then becomes like, is there ever a point where you can play a neutral 6 or 7 cost card, like in the tempo you lose from that, right? And is that okay? We'll see, I suppose.
So, one of the other things that you had wanted to talk about
Yeah,
was like just drafting in general for this week, right?
yeah, I love drafting, and I feel like first of all, I feel like the draft format changed a whole lot when Heroes of Skyrim came out, and like now I feel like I've got a much better feel for it than I did in the first couple weeks. But yeah, I thought maybe we could open it up to questions from people who have concerns about what's going right or wrong with their draft. And you and I know, do quite a bit of drafting, and we could maybe share some of our insights into the process.
Yeah, I think that's legit.
So, anybody have any questions about drafting? Just type them on out, and we'll talk about that. In the I guess there are a few, like, while we wait for questions. There's a few like staple like things, right? Like we were talking earlier, just sort of an aside, but in Chaos Arena, like you probably want to draft willpower because you want token generating cards that go wide, because there are a lot of lane effects that benefit that quite a bit. But in general, like what you want to do in a regular arena deck is look for the best removal options, right? And the best. What's your favorite domestic draft beer? Yeah, I don't drink. I haven't drank since November of 2010. And what kind of removal you're looking for, right? Kind of depends on what color you're in. Like, some require synergy, some of it's just unconditional, right? Like the yellow removal. But that's one of the reasons why why Scout is particularly weak in Arena, because the removal suite is limited to lay down arms and mummify, kind of, and leaf lurker and finish off. And one of the reasons why Assassin, despite having leaf lurker and finish off effects, is so strong, because it has access to the red damage based removal. I'm sorry, the blue damage based removal that synergizes so well with the green removal.
Yeah.
I don't know, man. What do you got?
I was going to say, one of the things that I would recommend, and I'm actually going to put a link to it in the chat as well. If you're watching this or listening to this podcast later, you can also just kind of Google the term. But there's this thing, it's an acronym called BREAD that was used for Magic the Gathering for a long time. And it kind of was meant to help people figure out like what, you know, is the best card, even if I know nothing about what's going on, right? Like, what are the things I should be looking for in draft? And so the acronym is really like bombs is the B, and that means things that, you know, can just outright win you a game on its own.
Hmm.
After that is R for removal, right? That's exactly what you were just talking about. Removal is really important. It allows you to be reactive, so on and so
Right.
forth. Um, there's also after that, typically in Magic, the E was for evasion, and that was creatures that could get damage in on your opponent without interacting with their board.
Yeah.
It's a little bit more difficult for like evasion to exist in a game like this. However, um,
Charge.
yeah,
Reach.
there are things like charge. There are things that provide reach. There is also just the other side, right? So I've seen the bread acronym also say efficient as opposed to evasion. So if you have some high efficiency stuff, it's there. After that, A is usually for like aggressive or anything, right? Like I call that just bodies when I'm drafting. Like if all
Yeah.
else fails, just take the thing that I can put on the board.
Right.
And then the D is usually for like duds, basically like the stuff that you're stuck with. So if you're not familiar with that acronym, you know, I would kind of look into it. You can still follow it for this game,
Yeah.
and it's really helpful. Real
I agree.
quick, I'm being yelled at. Jeffro the Dude, a longtime viewer, did just subscribe via Twitch. He's giving me a hard time for not acknowledging him, even though I was mid-long rant. So Jeffro, this is me acknowledging you. I look forward to your strongly worded letter. I love you.
Jeffro the Dude writes, "Dear Charmer, I'm subscribing for 2 months in a row, but you're not talking to me anymore. I'm afraid that we're going to have a long conversation about this later. Well, Jeffro, we appreciate your sub, and we love you.
Oh, now I want a sub.
Subs are great, man.
There's this really good, like, small local chain called Jersey Giants
Yeah,
over by my
never,
house. It's
never been
delicious. Yeah, I mean, it's like a local-ish
there. Okay.
thing, but it's delicious, and now I want one.
I really like, when I was living in Kansas, there was Mr. Good Sense, which was a sandwich shop chain that I really enjoyed. They don't have them here, so I go to Subway a lot. And there's but I mean, it's one of those things where like, a lot of the times when you go to these like chain restaurants, like as a vegetarian, like I feel like kind of left out by most of the options, but I can totally get a sandwich and like put all these sauces and vegetables and spices on it and feel great. And like, I really enjoy it.
Well, apparently everybody are draft superstars.
I know. The only comment about drafting we got was Tallulah saying that he learned how to draft watching our videos. I'm sorry.
He or she. Don't assume Tallulah's gender.
That's true. My apologies. Hocus Crocus, yes, I'm sure Charmer does rap better than I do because I am awful at rapping.
Oh, well, not draft related, but I like the question. Team Defiance asks, how can the ladder become better? This is something that we kind of touched on once in a previous podcast.
Yeah.
But for me, I would like to see them do something very similar to what Gwent has done with their pro ladder, but just for the overall ladder. And that is limit the number of games that count. Because right now, right, you could theoretically abuse time as opposed to efficiency to grind the ladder, right? You could take like a 60% win rate deck and play that, but as long as you played like 200 more games than the next person, essentially end better off than somebody else, right? There's also that whole like time factor.
Yeah.
The ladder right now kind of favors playing aggressive decks, not just because of the meta, though the meta is also very strong and favoring aggressive decks right now, but just because if I can play a deck and I can finish my game in 5 to 10 minutes, even if that deck has like a 5 to 10% win rate less than a control deck I would be playing, I will net, you know, 2, 3, 4 more games a night if I sit down and just even play for a couple of hours, and those mean more wins potentially to get me to progress on the ladder, right? So for me, if you want to make the ladder experience better, you have to make each game count, right? That's one of the things that's why the meta for tournaments is so different when you compare it to like just general ladder experience. The ladder is basically a best of one against anything you could possibly queue up against, right? But when you go to a tournament, not only is it not really a best of one, but also you're not likely to be like just running into random memes. You know, you kind of know what you're going to expect. You can game plan for it, but you're trying to play your best deck, right? Like win rate matters the most. You're going to play the thing that has the 80% win rate, even if those games take a half an hour, because the time part goes out the window. It's just, can I win the game?
Right.
So any way that you can, in my opinion, simulate that on the ladder, and I'm not even saying that like the way that Gwent is doing it is the best way. I just think that it's an interesting decision that could be explored more, because it's not, you know, how many games can I spam on the ladder in any given month?
Well said. So we have a draft question here. Kawhi Left Shark asks, what is the best curved draft in general? Like, how much early game should I draft in general? I tend to try to use my Hearthstone curve experience, but it's not exactly the same. So we touched on this a little bit. I think probably before the podcast started, where when Heroes of Skyrim cards were added to the draft pool, and this is something we were talking about because of the Heroes of Skyrim Gauntlet, the number of 2-drop creatures in Heroes of Skyrim is significantly lower percentage-wise than the number of 2-drop creatures in the other sets, right? So when it was added to the card pool of things that could be presented to you, the number of 2-drop creatures you were presented with, on average, decreased. They kind of make up for this by introducing a bunch of 3-drop cards that trade favorably with most 2-drop cards, like Woodland Lookout. In fact, all the lookouts, really. But there's this thing now where, like, if you draft a deck that has 5-6 2-drops, right, like, you're going to frequently find yourself in a position in a regular draft, in a regular arena run, where you're just going to be unstoppably snowballing out of control. I mean, the ability to go turn 2 2-drop, turn 3 3-drop, turn 4 2 2-drops is likely going to be difficult for you to stop if you don't find yourself being presented with those options. Like, you can draft like to beat those decks, right? Like, focus on the 3s and 4s with Guard, the Dark Guardians, the Hive Defenders, and stuff like that. But after 5 or 10 picks, like, you really need to start identifying, like, am I going to be on track to be that more aggressive, tempo-oriented like deck that's going to sacrifice early game creatures as they get destroyed by bigger creatures from my opponent, and then have the reach to finish the game? Or am I going to be able to gain control of the board, put my opponent in top deck mode, and then win with whatever creatures I have left?
Yeah, I think that is great advice. The only thing that I would potentially tack on as well, I think people, as a general rule, know that Prophecy is really strong, but the thing you have to remember specifically about Arena is that the deck size is smaller, so Prophecy is that much stronger because you're more likely to hit them. So if your curve is not perfect, but you can pack in a decent number of Prophecy cards, specifically creatures that impact the board, you can also just outright win games, because like if you catch, you know, a creature off of the first, you know, rune, maybe even the first and the second rune, you're just gonna win that game. It doesn't matter what your curve is, right? So you can make up for a bad curve sometimes if you just keep taking Mystic Dragon, is I guess what I'm trying to say.
Yeah, a Mystic Dragon off the first rune can just win you the game. Tula asks, what's the highest cost Prophecy in Skyrim Blue Dragon? There's a 5-cost blue card. It's a 2/3, but it says draw cards equal to the number of cards your opponent has drawn this turn. That's the most expensive.
Yeah.
Yeah. I like to avoid the colors that present the most one-dimensional draft options too, right? Like, I prefer the Assassins, the scouts, even though it lacks quality removal, the sorcerers over the or the warriors, even though they're less that, over the battle mages, the archers, and the crusader in particular. Because it's not that you can't draft good decks in those colors; it's that like if you are it's easier when presented with cards that don't necessarily work in the same deck very well in those colors, to have your like deck just be a hodgepodge of things that don't work well together. Whereas in colors that have a variety of playable cards across the spectrum that can be control, mid-range, aggro, whatever you need it to be, you're going to find that your draft experience is a little more forgiving of the randomness of the cards that are presented to you.
So Joe asked, what do we want from the next expansion? Should it be a story like Dark Brotherhood or packs like Skyrim, and what archetypes do you want to see support for? Do you want to beat that dead horse, or do I?
Yeah, go ahead, man. We answer this question.
Yeah. This comes up, it feels like every week.
Yeah.
You know, I desperately want a Hearthfire expansion that introduces player housing.
That's right.
And
I'd like to be able to adopt small children.
And if I can't get married, and it needs to be progressive. If I can't get married to Justin Larson, then this game is literally unplayable. Literally unplayable.
First you have to adopt me, then you have to raise me, and then you have to groom me. Actually, I'm talking about the Woody Allen expansion. That's my bad.
Oh, okay. Yeah, I mean, typically Justin and I's response are that, like, we'd love to see more story stuff because we think it's engaging. I'd like to see them add more player levels to the game, because I thought that was a very unique and interesting experience that I enjoyed when I first started playing. So I think they need to retap that well. And
I agree.
Typically, the other thing that him and I say is that for archetypes, we just want to see more build around cards, stuff like that was in the Madhouse collection that'll either spawn new archetypes or breathe new life into existing archetypes. Those are usually what we say. That's the too long didn't read version. So
yeah, I agree. Any more draft questions? Let's see here. What do we got?
Not draft related. We have, can you help me, mister? I don't know. That depends. If you have general questions about life or the Elder Scrolls Legends, then I can answer them. I don't know how helpful they will be. Also, if you're trapped at the bottom of a well, I cannot help you. You should call 911.
Or Lassie. She's good at that.
We also have Team Defiance asks, as an anti-meta player, how should they adapt each month? I notice I always need to make a new deck to fight the meta every month because it changes. The best answer I can say to that is actually don't even wait till like each month.
Yeah.
Right? Like,
just play whatever you want.
Well, play whatever you want, but like if you're specifically trying to combat the meta changes in my experience like once every week to 2 weeks.
Yeah.
Think of the best way I can describe it is, think of what it looks like at the beginning of a month when a new card comes out, and then think about what the meta looks like 2 weeks later, and then think about what the meta looks like at the end of the month. Like, it'll change throughout the course of the month. The best advice I can give you is to track your games, track your, not just your wins and losses, but what you're playing against. Yeah. And then if you see a shift, right, in the trend, and if you visit forums, visit Reddit, you talk to other players, utilize Discord, etc., you'll know what everyone else is playing against, and you'll notice that people will say, like, hey, I'm seeing this other thing more and more. Then start thinking about, like, what combats that, right? So I think that is the best thing to do if you're specifically trying to, stay one step ahead of the meta, if you will. Is to just pay attention to what is being played, but also pay attention to when the winds are changing, and then try to get out in front of it.
Well said. Yeah, I mean, like, when something becomes successful, when something becomes popular, I stop playing it. And then I just move on to the next thing that I just want to engage my time with. And then eventually that becomes popular. Like, I don't know, like a week after Heroes of Skyrim came out, I made a tokens deck that was all yellow, and I won 11 games in a row with it, right? And it was a couple weeks later when tokens became huge. Also, I was in a I was in a tournament, brought tokens, just destroyed. What's his name? I don't know. Some name in the community. And then it became huge there too. And you know what? I stopped playing tokens because I totally feel the like desire not to play the meta stuff. Fortunately, I think that like Heroes of Skyrim, despite having made some matches more polarized, and some curve outs, some more unbeatable, the cards are all relatively around the same power level. So like, just do something that no one else is doing, and if you're running powerful enough cards, like you'll win often enough that you should have a good time.
Yeah. The other thing to note is that there are certain decks that do well because of what I call the surprise factor. And even if it's a good deck when you first start playing it, like,
Yeah.
it's going to taper off, not even just because of like the meta adapting, but just because people will be more aware of it, right? Like when I think about like when prophecy heavy decks were really coming to life way back, early stages of the game, it was prophecy assassin, not battle mage back then, and they were very effective because people just weren't expecting somebody to run like 30 prophecies.
Right.
But like once people caught on, like that deck started to taper off, and then it wasn't until like the battle mage version showed up and they got a couple more tools and some cards got like nerfed and blah blah blah. But like similarly, like as somebody who's been playing charge based decks for like the last 9 months, when I came up with the battle mage version of Time to Fight, everybody was expecting battle mage to be prophecy battle mage. So they felt like, okay, if I just sit back and I don't hit the guy, he'll run out of gas, and that's how you win that match. And that wasn't the case. Like I just kept drawing direct damage, and so that worked, and I did very well. In fact, I even took that into one of the tournaments, and I was like winning games that were being casted. But a lot of that was surprise factor, right? Like people weren't expecting that kind of deck at the time. Now people are very familiar with, Time to Fight, with Charger, Ray Chargels, etc. Because I've been playing them for 9 months, trying to beat that dead horse. Like, hey, this is viable. But yeah, surprising people, like support mage. The first time I ever played against support mage, totally caught me off guard.
That's a good example of a deck that has flaws that can be exploited, that beats you the first time you see it.
Yeah.
Another deck like that is every so often Pilfer Monk shows up again. And we all forget, right? Forget how Pilfer Monk kills you and how quickly it does it. And then you remember, and then you just beat it every time you play against it.
Oh, so non-draft related, but Joe asks, how sustainable do you think the current power level is? Is Legends capable of an extended use of horizontal power creep instead of vertical power creep?
I think historically there's evidence that it is capable of it. I don't think the power level of the game, or the average card, for instance, increased when Madhouse Collection came out, and debatably even when Fall of the Dark Brotherhood came out. I think Heroes of Skyrim features some true power creep as far as pushing cards out of the meta because they can't compete anymore. So I have faith that they're capable of doing it again.
Yeah, to me, I think that the answer is a mixed bag, because I would argue that there has been very, very few direct vertical power creep instances in the game thus far. Yeah. However, I would also say that the decks overall are getting more polarized and just kind of like in general of a higher power level and a higher quality than when the game was first released, because of the synergy, right? So while individually in a vacuum cards are not creeping vertically in power, just by the nature of the way the card games exist, the more resources you have available to create synergy with, the more powerful things become. So I don't think that I think all card games will inevitably have vertical power creep. Like even if you never do a direct here's a vanilla 2-2 and now here's a vanilla 2-3, like that sort of direct power creep. it will be a thing that happens because you'll print something and it'll make a card that was like mediocre before be outstanding now, and that'll just continue to happen because you'll have more options.
I completely agree. Long term, it's inevitable, like you said. That's why I think in a year or two, I think that introducing rotating formats is a good idea. I think that it'll be interesting to see. We talked last week about, and this is something I mentioned many times, which is I think that past a point, once any card pool expands past a certain point, deck diversity will naturally decrease, and by that I mean, like, not that there aren't more options to play, but like more decks that are successfully capable of winning. And that's because I believe that whereas pre Heroes of Skyrim, pre Fall of the Dark Brotherhood, you had like 25, let's say, cards that were going in that class because they're just high quality cards, class defining cards. And then you had these other 25 like flex slots where you put in the stuff that expressed exactly what you wanted to do with that deck, or cards that you just really enjoyed. And as the card pool is expanded, rather than like increase the diversity of decks that are competing at the highest level, what we see is that a deck may now have 35 or 40 like auto includes because they're best in slot, best at what they do in each class, right? And so the number of flex slots, the number of like I could run this or I could run this, like neither one of them are amazing or class defining. Because the number of those slots are decreasing, like over time, the diversity of the tier 1 caliber decks is decreasing as well. Which is why I think that, because I believe the game's going to be around for a long time. I mean, Bethesda's behind it, Direwolf's behind it. These are, huge companies that produce good work, that support their products for a long time. I mean, like Skyrim just got released for like the 8th time.
Yeah.
So like I have no doubt that the game's going to be around for a while, but I do think it's why format rotation is inevitable.
Yeah, I mean, we're going to get Legends VR, we're going to get Legends on Nintendo Switch, we're going to get,
Right.
Legends Remastered, we're going to get...
Right. Intravenous Legends. Yeah.
Legends Collector's Edition.
Yeah. For the retro gamers, they'll print off some paper cards too.
Hey, I've got some of those.
I know you do. I have paper Eternal cards. I got those when I was at Direwolf, but they did not have any Legends ones for me.
Oh. So, Zombie Hunter 9x19 asks, do you think that Mentor of the Watch is good in draft? And what class do you think uses it the best?
It's not terrible. I would pick a lot of things over it. It's just, it doesn't fill that role of combating the deck that has the 2-drops, because like you're playing your 3-drop, it's a 2/2, and it's very likely that that'll die in a favorable trade for your opponent, and then you're like behind even more than you were before because you didn't have a 2-drop. Like, yeah, you may have given your Frost Troll guard, and that may catch you up later, but you need your 3-drops with guard to be Dark Guardian. I don't know. It's not terrible. There are definitely decks that it could work in, but I would not be excited about it.
Yeah, I mean, he's a good prophecy option, right?
Yeah, it's not bad. You hit it on prophecy. It's all upside.
So, Kawaii Left Shark, which again, every time I see, love the name, asked an off-topic question, Barbas keep or dust it. I just want to say publicly, you always keep Barbas. Always.
Yeah.
He's a good boy.
He is. He's a good card. I mean, he's a really flexible card, which is what makes him good. I think you could probably succeed in the Heroes of Skyrim Gauntlet by putting Barbas in most of your decks.
So we had two additional questions. One was, when will competitive tournaments happen? They're already happening. So not only
Yeah.
was there like the Legends Championship series, and they're on a bit of a hiatus as they rework how they want to attack things, but there is the like esports league thing that Bethesda is working with. I think they're currently like European focused because I think they wanted like a small test market, but I would expect to
Right.
see more of that in the future.
Yeah.
Um, I mean, if you're asking like when are like huge, large scale, big money tournaments gonna happen, that's anybody's guess as good as anything. But competitive stuff is happening now, um, and I would expect more of it in the future. It's just gonna be slow goings. Like you have to look at who Bethesda is historically. Like as a company, they never rush
Right.
things, like
That is very,
ever.
very true.
They don't rush the development of their single player games. When they released Elder Scrolls Online, they purposefully were not rushing things in that, and it took several years for that to like really come to fruition. But it's very beloved as a game now, right? Like
That's true.
they believe in small incremental, changes that they feel really good about, as opposed to vast sweeping things that could make or break. So, yeah.
I agree.
The other question was, what's the card that has saved you the most?
It's a good question. Dawnstar Healer.
That's a
Gotta go with Dawnstar Healer.
that's a solid one. For me, it's Lightning Bolt.
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, the number of games I've won with Lightning Bolt to the face, off of like a prophecy, the number of times Lightning Bolt, stopping a creature that would have killed me.
Yeah.
Those are definitely it. If I had to pick a second, right, it would be Shrieking Harpy. Shrieking Harpy, not even just off of prophecy, but just oftentimes like as a tempo play. Like I play it to make your board not be able to react to mine and continue to push pressure. Is like an invaluable tool. So
I agree. I think Red Brahmin's got to be up there for me too, as a card that just turns games around.
I mean, yeah, so I had thought about saying something like Garnag, but the truth is, the question was what one has saved me the most, and because it's a unique legend, like Garnag has saved me a ton, but I just don't always see him as often, right? Like I've caught a lot of Lightning Bolts, I've caught a lot of Harpies, so
yeah, I agree. Someone asked earlier, we missed this question, which one of us would win in a fight? And I'm going to go ahead and answer this one for both of us and say that Charmer is in much better shape than I am and would definitely win in a fight. All I have going for me is like treachery and life experience, but Charmer's badass. So I'm going to give that one to him.
I don't know if that's the case. I think that it would be a really uninteresting cage match if like we're both just meditating in front of the other one in our pacifist ways.
Hey, how tall are you, man?
Oh, I don't know this. I'm gigantic. I am huge. I am all of 5'9". But in my defense, I am the tallest male on my mom's side of the family. So
that's crazy. I'm the shortest, and I'm 5'11".
Yeah.
My brother is 6'3". My dad's 6'1". My mom's about my height.
Yeah. Yeah, I would give you probably size and reach, but I would give me the willingness to cheat. Like, I don't believe in fair fights. Like I've already explained this to my wife. I was like, you don't want to ever get me like in a
just
bar
give her
fight.
the heads up.
Yeah, I gave her the heads up so that we wouldn't ever be in a scenario where she was trying to like instigate something. Like even when we were younger, I was like, listen, like if you ever think that there's gonna be a scenario where I'm like puffing my chest or I'm saying come at me, bro, you're wrong. If I'm deciding to fight, it's because I've already thrown a punch. Like I believe in striking first. I believe in scorched earth tactics. I will end it before it began. Like
that's funny.
Because like I understand that I'm 5'9" and I understand that like fights are weird. Like when it comes to like real life fights, it's not like the MMA, man. Like people just like sometimes you catch one lucky shot, and I like my brain way too much. I don't want somebody to catch me with a beer bottle or anything. So there's a reason I play charge decks. I want to hit first, right? I don't want to give them a hope in hell. I want to be the drawn first blood and just calling it.
I understand, man. I mean, I'm on the same page with that philosophy. Like, there's a reason I survived. I mean, we'll just kind of leave it at that.
Yeah, like I just I don't I don't want to mess around with it, right? Like if I'm deciding I'm
Yeah,
gonna fight, I'm certainly not gonna telegraph, right? I'm not gonna be the guy
right.
that like pulls your shirt off and says like, what's going
Yeah.
on? Like no, it's you know, I will cut you down. I will
Jesus Christ, dude.
I was about to go on some rant like I will kill you and your family. I will attack your family tree. I will deroot it, salt the earth like
Wow.
but again, like that's I
Fair enough, bro. All right.
I believe in winning. Like I told you this, deep down I'm
Yeah.
a Spike. So
Yeah, I get it. I get it now. Fuck.
yeah. It's been a long week, all right?
No, yeah, I understand, man. I understand.
Oh, Tallulah uh, says that you were a clown in prison and Charmer would fight dirty. Yep, pretty much. Nailed it. We did have the good question, I felt. Team Defiance asks, how do you feel losing to Prophecy when you're going for lethal?
It's a bummer, man. It's one of those things you got to take into consideration when you're going for lethal. And I'm sure it actually only accounts for like a very small percentage of like games that you lose, but it probably feels like 50% of them because of how that works.
Yeah.
I don't know. I like the prophecy system. I'm totally down with it.
Yeah, I guess for me, right?
I don't like Mystic Dragon, but I like the prophecy system.
Well, sure, but that's not one that's like gonna stop you when you're swinging for lethal, though, right? Like Mystic
Right.
Dragon's the dark side of Prophecy, where it's the
Yeah.
free tempo. But
Exactly.
for me, I guess I would say like one, does it suck when it happens? Yes, but that's just because I don't like to lose. I've said it before. I'll say it again. I hate losing more than I like winning. Right? So do I enjoy it when it happens? No. But am I like ultimately when I reflect, am I mad? Not really.
Yeah.
The thing you have to remember about Legends is nothing is yours until it's yours. And it's one of the reasons
Yeah.
as I enjoy this game. One of the common complaints I hear from like new players or people who have played other games that are not familiar with how this one works is they like to say things like, I don't like Prophecy, I feel like I'm being punished for winning, right? Like I'm supposed to hit my opponent, I hit my opponent, and then suddenly they turn it around and I'm being punished for winning. But to my argument there is like, you're not winning yet, right? You're winning based on like what's
That's
on
true.
the board, but it's not yours until it's yours. And
It's part of the reason I think Legends is such a superior game to Hearthstone too, right?
yeah,
Like I still watch a couple people play Hearthstone just because like I follow like this guy Dane who plays these really silly decks, and he's one of my favorite YouTubers. And I enjoy watching him, but as I watch now that I'm so into Legends, like I just can't help but feel that like it's obvious you're going to lose much sooner in Hearthstone than it actually is, in Legends, and there's always that chance of a turnaround in Legends. And that's something you can build for. It's something it creates additional layers of planning and gameplay that just doesn't exist elsewhere.
yeah. Well, so the other thing that like stands out to me, right, is just that idea of um, sometimes you can be punished, and it's really apparent like after you've played the game for a bit, but like you can be punished for the quote unquote like trying to win thing. The best example I can give is like when you're attacking for one when your opponent's at 26, right? Unless your deck is an all in, sell out, straight
Right.
to the face aggro deck, you
Yes.
should almost never like just swing for one when they're
Right.
at 26. Like there's no benefit. Like it's fine, just wait a turn. You want to make sure that you can be able to respond. Similarly, like don't go cracking runes after you spend all your magicka, especially if you have a removal in your hand, because if they get something, you need to be able to react.
Yeah.
And so people who come from other games and they come here and they just sell out and they keep going face, and then they get punished for that. They say like, well, I'm being punished for winning, but you're being punished for not recognizing the board state and not recognizing the potential outcomes, right?
Yeah.
So it's one of those like you have to learn to like deal with that. And so for me,
I got a funny story, man. Like, so I was I was practicing last Friday with my singleton deck on the ladder, and Pete Hines started spectating me. And I'm playing this stupid assassin deck, and I had set up lethal. I'm playing against, I don't even remember. I was playing against Scout, and I had uh, I had set up lethal on board. I was super. I mean, Scout's tier 1, tier 1.5 deck. I was like, I'm rocking it. I'm awesome. I'm getting watched by this guy. And then I just got to break these 2 runes. I'm like, Scout runs, no prophecies. I got this. And so I swing in a manner that did not play around double midnight sweep.
Oh god.
And I lost the game because I didn't play around it, and I could have. That's the worst part about this. Like, if I had thought, like, hey man, this could happen, like, well, then I mean, I would have won the game.
Yeah.
But like those decisions, like they're constantly there, and they add so much tension to like the decision making that I think it's great.
Yeah, and that's exactly kind of what I'm, trying to say is it's that whole
Right.
the surprise factor, but it's not really a surprise because it's like potential known values is
Right.
just something that you have to take into account. Yeah, I can tell you so many times that I've been saved by prophecies as well, and it just feels really good, like playing to your outs. Like I think I've got on
Yeah.
my YouTube channel a video I called "Sometimes Lucky," and
Mhm.
I literally made it because I was like, it's really easy to complain and have that confirmation bias and think like, oh man, my opponents always get it. But like I had a
Right.
run of like 2 days where like everything went right. So I was like, I'm gonna record this and just rewatch this every time I get down. And it actually does a lot for me personally to like rewatch those games and be like, oh yeah, sometimes it
Yeah.
does happen to me.
Absolutely. The only video of mine that I've watched repeatedly actually is the relatively recent one where I'm playing the orc deck and I get all frustrated and lose, and then I meet God, the cat, and whatever. I don't know why, but like for the most part, I hate watching myself. But like I love watching myself roll around in the grass with my cat. Like that is the only video of mine I've watched more than once for sure.
Oh wow, I like to watch. So I did one where I kill somebody with Alina Banak by shooting him in the face with her ability,
Oh
but
yeah,
I did it like an Overwatch highlight. So if you play Overwatch, I highly
yeah, that's
recommend
right. I
that.
remember that now. Yeah,
I'll rewatch that because that one's quick and I just enjoy
yeah.
it. And I got a couple others.
Do you remember the Reddit post when Elena was given because Elena used to she's a 6 Magica, a 1/1 with lethal that deals 1 damage just to something when she comes into play. She used to only be able to do damage to creatures,
Yeah.
and she was changed to be able to do damage to players, which is fine. But Bethesda has a policy of allowing you to disenchant Soul Trap cards for their full Soul Shard value if they've been nerfed, but not if they've been buffed. And somebody posted on Reddit after that they were really pissed they couldn't Soul Trap their Elena because it had been changed. And somebody asked, like, what are you talking about? Is a clear buff, like 100% buff. And he's like, the card is more complicated now, and people might get confused, so it's worse.
Yeah, they might shoot themselves in the face. Was literally their argument. I do remember that.
Oh my god, I think that's one of the funniest things I've ever read on Reddit. Yeah, that was great.
I don't want it to get lost. So, Duke Wolf asked a while back, more related
Yeah.
to the community, what do you think is the most rage-inducing deck to play against?
That's a good question. Oh no, wait, I know. It's it's Battle Mage decks of the Charge or Prophecy variety for me.
You're welcome.
Yeah, thanks, dude. I like 3 months ago, I literally sent him a message on Twitter just saying like, "Fuck your Charge deck."
Yeah, you really did. And I was just like, oh.
Yeah.
But again, to be fair, it wasn't like it was a flavor of the month thing. I've literally been trying to make that archetype work for like 9 months. It just finally took off in popularity. People stopped telling me that I was a horrible player for including Rampaging Minotaur. That used to be my favorite thing ever when I played the very first version of that deck. Despite, I would win like 70-80% of my games with it on stream, and nightly people would be like, this deck is junk and you're a horrible player and nobody should ever run Rampaging Minotaur.
Yeah.
Oh.
Yeah, I mean, I do hate playing against that deck.
Well, I mean, of course, it's...
It was fun when I was playing a lot of the mid-range Crusader deck. that deck just like destroys that deck, and that was fun. So I guess I didn't mind those matchups then, but yeah, other than that, I just don't enjoy that deck.
Yeah, so for me, I think the most rage-inducing deck to play against is probably Support Mage.
Oh yeah, there are
Because
decks that just have no way to beat that.
there are some decks that just have no way to beat it, and there's just no... It feels like when you're playing the decks that have a bad matchup against it, it feels like there's nothing you can do. Like, I can remove Cauldron Keepers, I can remove the like alchemists that let them get unlimited charges. I can do all of those things, and like it still doesn't matter. Like they just gain a ridiculous amount of health, and they do all of the things. Doesn't matter if it's aggro or mid range. Basically, unless you're also playing like ramp scout or something, like you lose to support mage. It feels like.
Right. Yeah, I agree.
And
I think that deck's done a good job of leading the like. I think that deck's part of the reason tokens were so hated out.
Yeah, I would agree. Actually, flattering question. I'm new to Twitch. Is Charmer and Justin the developer of the game? No, we are. We are not the developers. The game is developed by a company called Direwolf Digital. Sometimes a couple of the devs will pop in because they're very kind and hang out and chat with us.
Yes.
The game is also published by Bethesda, and so some of the Bethesda staff will also sometimes pop in, but we are just incredibly avid fans who've been playing since closed beta, and love to talk about it.
Right. I do work down the street from Direwolf. That's as close as I get.
Probably
wow, I was gonna say this is the first time my volume has ever been proper.
Yeah, and I was gonna say it's probably because I'm not talking toward the mic.
Yeah,
I need to likely adjust my levels after this.
I think you need to adjust your levels after going on that rant about destroying people completely. I mean Xanax levels, bro.
Yeah, I know. So it's in there, right? Like it's the old Bruce Banner. That's my secret. I'm always angry. Honestly, I think my levels got adjusted. So if you guys aren't familiar, sometimes I make my wife guest stream horror games, and she's a lot more animated, a lot more entertaining, but also a little bit louder than me. So I typically turn the mic down a hair when she streams, and I think I forgot to turn it back up afterwards. So I'll have to adjust it later. My apologies. Joe asks, what does Charmer do for work? What does Charmer not do for work? My primary day job during the day is I work for my state government, specifically in our Department of Treasury. I work in data governance, and I try to help identify and prevent identity theft and tax fraud. I also teach computer science for a local university at night. So I teach college programming courses and college, like this semester I'm teaching database design. I also do some consulting work for my previous employer, which was a nonprofit organization that worked in K-12 education. And so I'll do some stuff for them. And then there's the Twitch thing, right? So like I stream here. I don't make any money off of this, so this is entirely my hobby. I do this because I love it and I love you guys. But like I stream on Twitch. I have a YouTube channel. I do all of those things. So
yeah. Rock and roll, man.
And Justin, all Justin does for work is he gets promoted.
Yes. Specifically what I do is I work on a grant that my new job is to work with people age 18 to 24 who are involved in the justice system, who live in high crime, high poverty neighborhoods as defined by the census, who are at risk of going to prison, and I do psychotherapy. Also, no, that's it. Oh, I'm in grad school too.
Oh yeah, that's right.
I forgot about that. Yes, I also do that. I have no free time.
Yeah. We're very busy, but we keep finding time for this.
That's true. That's true. um, Resident Evil 7 is better than Resident Evil. Fun fact: the first rated R movie I saw in the theater that I actually bought a ticket for was the Resident Evil movie, the first one.
Really? The first
Yeah,
rated R, huh?
that I bought a ticket for. Yeah, the first rated R movie I saw in the theater was my parents took me to see Schindler's List when I was a kid, and then a couple years after that, I snuck into the South Park movie.
Yeah, I'm trying to think, like, the first rated R movie that I bought a ticket for. Man.
Yeah, I mean, like, I used to sneak into movies all the time. Joe's asking about that
Yeah,
I bought a ticket
well,
for.
like, I used to sneak into movies, or I'd get other people
Yeah.
to buy me tickets, or whatever the case may be. But
Yeah.
I'm trying to think about, like, the first rated R movie. Like, I gotta think about, like, when I would have even been, like, old enough, right?
Yeah.
So it would have been, like, 2001?
Yeah.
What came out in 2001?
I don't know, man.
Yeah, I don't know either. I feel like it's gonna be something, like, super lame, too. It's not even gonna be...
Yeah, well, Resident Evil's kind of lame.
Yeah, I mean, it really was. I don't know.
Yeah.
That's a franchise just as a general thing that, like, I felt like I really enjoyed the first one.
Yeah. I don't even remember if I mean, I was high as fuck. I kind of remember
like,
if I enjoyed
I really enjoyed the first one because of, like, what it was offering, and then it started to derail. Like, I enjoyed the horror aspects of it, right? Like, I enjoyed that it purposely gave you, like, horrible camera angles so that things could jump out at you and those things. And then it just turned into, like, a first-person shooter where you just shot zombies all the time, and, like, I kind of just stopped caring, and I prefer, like, the horror aspects. I don't know. I like horror games. I like psychological games. I love it when they mix. Like, one of my favorite games of the last couple, like, 2 years or so is Soma. Still, if you haven't played that, Justin, I highly recommend it. It's a single-player, like, psychological horror game, and I think the reason I enjoyed it is because the concept and the story behind it is the sort of thing that, like, 2 weeks later I was still thinking about it. And I don't want to say too much, because if you haven't played it, I don't want to give it away. But I would highly,
Soma?
yeah,
Like
Soma,
the
Soma.
Yeah, like the drug from Brave New World.
Yeah, it's it was really enjoyable for me. So,
all right, yeah, I'll check it out. We got some questions. What do I think of Mentor's Ring? Mentor's Ring is funny when you use it to one-turn kill somebody in Battle Mage. Mentor's Ring is playable in some wacky assassin decks. I mean, those are the two instances I've ever used it for.
I used to use it as a one-of in Sorcerer to throw on Night Shadow and give all my creatures drain.
That works.
You basically just win the game when that happens.
I think it's perfectly costed. It's just, like, super situational.
Yeah. I do want to say that I think that it's interesting you're okay with charge when it's a one-turn kill.
Yeah, look, if that deck was good, I would be more concerned about it.
I take, like, 4 turns to kill somebody with my charge creatures, Justin. 4 whole turns and you have a problem. Somebody does it in 1.
The Stealer of Secrets combo deck is the worst combo deck I've ever played. I mean, I have a better success rate with Riri Barker's insane monk deck that's not really even supposed to win games. I win more often with that than I do with the Stealer of Secrets deck.
I have a legitimate question for you, though, Justin.
Yeah.
As we talk about, like, trying to stay one step ahead of the meta.
Yeah.
A while ago, and I, for the most part, I think it's still roughly true, with the exception of support mage starting to pop up. But a while ago, you and I had talked about this might be the lowest usage of lightning bolt in Legends history, right?
Yeah.
So, given that there's not a lot of, like, those instant impact prophecies that could potentially interrupt stuff, do you think that there's room for the Wisp Raider combo deck to make a comeback?
That's a good question. I think that deck... Well, you know what's funny? You mentioned... I was thinking about its matchup against Mage, right? Because Mage has the most ways to interrupt that. as far as prophecies go with lightning bolt and piercing javelin.
Mm-hmm.
But I think that that deck might be able to just win. Well, look, there's two possibilities. On the one hand, support mage gives that deck all the time it needs to do that dumb stuff. But if they put you on Wisp Mother combo, you'll lose.
Right.
Because they'll shift their game plan.
Yeah.
But beyond that, I think it might be a pretty good time to play it. Like you don't see like there are like not even every willpower deck runs javelin, right? So
Yeah. I mean, the reason I say support mage specifically is because they have the best ways to just like, oops, I gained 30 life, right? So
right,
they can
exactly.
keep you from triggering that first rune to set it
I think
off.
right. I think they like the minute you play Merchant's Camel, they play Undying Dragon and you lose.
Yeah. But like outside of that, there's just not a lot of
That's
decks
true.
that are running ways to interrupt it. So like if you can survive long enough to pull it off, it is a deck that has Ice Storm in it.
Yeah,
I think that it could
I
be
like
fun
it.
to try.
I do like that idea. Um, Justin, are you still playing Civ 6? I not as much lately. I'm really excited about the update that we just got with the new religious units and the two new civilizations that are coming out. And I'll definitely try those out. I kind of go in spurts, right? Like because like Civ 6 takes like 8 hours for a game when you play it like I do. uh, I don't have 8 hour uninterrupted blocks to work with right now, but I'll make the time um, when those new civilizations come out. Civ 6 is great though. I mean, look, I've played Civ 4, Civ 5, and Civ 6 all within the last like 3 years, and that's when I got into Civilization, and I think Civ 6 is the best.
Yeah, I really liked Beyond Earth as
Yeah, I like
well.
that too. I have Beyond Earth as well. I like that game.
I felt like it was a great concept. It just needed to be like fleshed out a hair more, in my opinion. But I really enjoyed playing that.
I agree. In fact, I think I played my most recent Beyond Earth game within the last month, and it's been about that long too since I played Civilization. Ever since I got Divinity Original Sin 2, like that's been eating up my gaming time as far
Oh,
as
nice.
things besides Legends go.
Yeah, that's a solid choice.
That game is amazing. I've nowhere near beating the game. I've started over twice for no particular reason, but Pete Crichton, yeah, I own Endless Legend. I've probably only put like 20 hours into it over the last couple of years, but I haven't. It's just a matter of time. I've enjoyed what I've seen so far.
Yeah, I I will admit I love Civ games. I think my biggest problem with those is just simply that they're a time trap,
Yeah,
right? Like it's not
right,
even that you need the 8 hour block. It's just that you inevitably play for 8 hours. It's always one more
right.
turn, right? One more turn.
Yeah.
One more
I will,
turn.
it definitely indulges like this compulsive side of me that like I try to like keep at bay. Like I try to make it a point not to do too much of anything for too long at a time, and with Civilization, it's really hard. So that's just like a personal thing for me, but I do really enjoy the game. Um, yeah, one more turn indeed. My favorite civilization right now in Civ 6 is Australia. I've been enjoying that one lately.
Any particular reason or?
I've been trying lately to. I haven't been successful yet. I play on like the higher difficulty levels. I've been trying to win on natural start or true location start Earth with Australia a religious victory. It's just like something I've got caught in my head as something I want to do, and I haven't been able to pull it off yet. It's just the fact that I haven't been able to do it's been eating away at me. I like Australia I think it's a lot of fun in the true location starts because like you have all of Australia, right? And I don't know. They're not particularly set up for a religious victory either, so it's the challenge, I think.
It's hard to spread your religion when you're trapped on your lonely continent, right?
Exactly. There's a lot of reasons it's not working, but I've been enjoying it. Yeah.
Yeah.
We want to take final questions?
Yeah, I think so. I was trying to scan, but I don't think that we've had any other Legends related ones come through.
Australia, the land of nope. I'd like to go to Australia someday in real life. That'd be sweet. Sandra and I have plotted out our. We're taking a vacation. We're taking a vacation the second week of December. We're going to San Diego. We're gonna drive. We're gonna drive it. We're gonna go to Santa Fe for 2 days. Do the art gallery thing there. Harass George R. Martin about why he's not finishing his fucking books. Then we're going to Flagstaff to see Meteor Crater, and then we're gonna go straight down Route 66 and end up in Los Angeles. Then to go south to San Diego.
Yeah, that sounds like a blast.
Yeah, I'm excited.
I've got family in Australia.
Do you really?
I really wish I would have went sooner. Like one of my favorite cousins lived out there. He was a actor and a vocal coach. He actually moved out there for work.
Oh, cool.
Then like met the love of his life, got married, had kids, but then he died in his early 40s from throat cancer.
Oh, wow.
So, well, I mean, it was esophageal cancer, but like it was very unexpected, and it was always one of those things that like it's an expensive trip, so we kept saying like we're gonna save and then go do it, and then yeah, kind of.
Wow, I'm sorry, man.
Yeah, I mean that's my family.
Really?
Yeah, I mean they just drop like flies, unfortunately, especially on my mom's side. We're not a very hardy people.
Yeah. My people die of alcoholism.
So, like on my father's side, they're all alcoholics and they're all indestructible. Like my grandma lived to be like 94, and like was the most like resilient, active person I know. My biological father has been a raging alcoholic for like well before like I was born. And not only does the dude still look like he's probably in his early 40s, but like he's been to prison and all of these other things, and like I don't know how he has a liver. Let me put it to you that way, right? Like this is a dude that used to. This is what he would do, right? For his work days, to get away with drinking while at work and driving, he would buy his 40, but then he would put it in one of those like. Do you remember the old plastic like giant 7-Up cups, but that were like meant for slushies?
Yeah,
like,
I know what you're talking about.
Yeah, he would like dump his 40 in there so that it was hidden, and then just like drink and drive with that every day. And like he just consumes so much. Like I don't know how his liver isn't solid. So I'm either going to live forever or I'm going to like die in my 40s, and there's not much in between, unfortunately.
You know, you always see those interviews with like people who are like 115, right? And they're like, "What's your secret?" And they're like, "Well, I get up and I take a shot of whiskey and I smoke a cigar and then I eat a pound of bacon." And you realize like that it's not that like smoking cigars, drinking whiskey, and eating bacon is like the key to living to 115. It's that like this guy would live through anything.
Yeah.
Right? Like he realized it at some point, and it's like, well, you know what? Like I might as well go hard.
Yeah, well, I mean, it's either those people or the ones that always crack me up as well. I remember once there was this lady, she was like 106, and they asked her what the key to her longevity was, and she was like, well, I sleep a lot. And in my head, I was like, okay, so really you've lived the life of like a 70-year-old, but you spent like an extra 40 years in bed.
Exactly. Yeah. That's all right, though. Pete writes that my German is impeccable. I've actually spent some time in Germany when I was a younger man. I went there with my granddad. I have family there, and drank my way across the country with my granddad. This is all connecting. It's all on topic.
Yeah. I wish that I had cool travel stories, but I've only left the country once.
Yeah.
I live in Michigan. I drove to the Windsor Casino. So if you're not familiar, it's like 5 minutes from the border. I drove to the casino. I played for like 8 hours, and then I came home. That is my entire international experience.
I've been to Canada, Mexico, the Netherlands, Germany, Austria, Italy, Slovenia. some of the Caribbean islands. I wasn't always a homeless junkie. Like, I was good at it for a while. Yeah.
I mean, I'm getting close. There's a big train that runs past where I work,
Yeah.
and I literally said to a coworker on Friday, I was like, "Do you ever just look at that train and think I should hop on and just never come back?"
Oh, yeah. Where have I been in Germany? I don't know, man. Like, all over the place. I spent a couple weeks in Munich, but like all the major cities. What are some off the wall places? I don't know, man. This was 15 years ago.
So Mox says Legends must not have much to talk about. No, we're just rolling up on the end, and people stopped asking questions, mate. Duke, how do people get the Javelin with the new artwork? That was part of a special Gauntlet run. So you basically had to participate in it, and then you got 3 copies of the Javelin.
Yeah.
They have not said if they will run that event again, or if it's going to be like a time limited thing, but it comes from a very specific event.
Yeah. I have cousins who live in Berlin. I know I visited them, Melissa. It looks like we got one more game-related question. Joe asks, what sort of design decisions do you hope Direwolf Digital will steer away from for the next expansion? That's an interesting question. What do we want them to avoid? I feel like we're at a critical mass of ramp effects that are necessary in the format at any given time. I don't know if that's a design decision.
I was going to say, for me...
I feel the same way about charge creatures.
I was going to say, it's not even just like ramp in general. For me, I think that each class has a pretty solid identity right now, but I'm not sure that I want to see them play up those identities any further in the current form, or whether that's ramp, whether that's charge, direct damage, etc. I would like to see them explore new options for the different classes, still keep them feeling different and unique, but if they continue to give us more of the same, we're certainly going to run into a situation where deck diversity drops even further, because there will just be too many cards that are just like that good that become auto include, that you won't like run anything in between. So I would like to see them explore new territory as opposed to just continuing to slab bricks on the existing foundation, if that makes any sense.
I agree. I want to give Moxfire a shout out. It's been a while, man. How you been? I guess this is not a two-way conversation, but it's good to see you.
Yeah, no, it's definitely... It's good every time he stops by. If you guys don't know, he used to stream Legends a long time ago, and then some Gwent, and so on and so forth.
Mud Crab Challenge.
Mud Crab Challenge.
Yep. I talked about that last week, actually. I checked out Hand of the Gods. I bought all those intro packs or whatever. It's interesting. You need some work, but it's definitely it's not competing with Legends. Like, it's a completely different kind of game. But I enjoy it.
Yeah, it's okay. Something just feels off to me, and it's weird. I feel like it would be the game that's right up my alley. I'm a huge like Greek myth and Norse myth and so on and so forth style nerd. So from an IP standpoint, it should be right up my alley. I also enjoy like strategic board games. It's one of the reasons I enjoy Shardbound as much as I do. So that part should be right up my alley. I love card games. That part should be right up. And yet when I play it, I just continue to have this feeling like something is missing. I don't know if it's just because there's not enough depth to it yet, because even though each pantheon has like their own like leader with abilities and whatever, like I don't know, it always feels like I'm playing the same thing regardless, if that makes sense, right? Like everything feels like I just play things and hope that they're better than what my opponent has. Board position matters a little, but not a lot, right? It's not like Shardbound where terrain matters and high ground and line of sight and all of those things. I feel like it's just not enough of what I want. Something is missing, but I can't like...
Some parts of the game are very unintuitive, too. Like, I'd learned basically nothing in the tutorial, and learned everything I know about the game by repeatedly fucking up when things didn't do what I thought they were going to do.
Yeah, I mean, there's that too. If you haven't played like Duelist or whatever before, there's this like, especially if you're coming from Shardbound, this moment where you're like, oh wait, like ranged things counterattack.
Yeah.
Yeah, like I said, I don't know how to fully articulate it. It just, one, it feels to me like the game wasn't made by people who make like card games. I
Yeah.
guess might be the right way to put it.
Yeah.
But yeah, like I want to like it, and I'm playing in it here and there, and it's not bad. Like I don't want this to be like an undersell of the game. If you haven't tried it out,
Yeah.
you should try it.
I don't think it's bad either. It just needs a lot of work.
Yeah, it doesn't grab me the way some of the other stuff does. So
I think we should take Joe's question as our last one for the night. Joe writes, "Dear Charmer, do you ever think they will surpass Gerald Forager as being the objectively worst creature in the game?"
First of all, Jarell Forager is not the worst creature in the game. That's why I own a premium playset. Come fight me.
We crafted you crafted the premium playset a couple weeks ago on the show.
Yeah. Jarell Forager, not the worst creature.
Very nice.
But no, I don't think that they will ever objectively, like, on purpose do something worse unless there's also a gimmick with it. I guess I would say that preface, right? Like
I would play Gerald Forager a million times before I played Studium Headmaster.
I would play Jarell Forager like long before I would play like even some of the robot options. Like, let's be honest. Like, unless you're playing the robot deck, there's no reason to put the robots in anything.
That's true. Only Spiderworker really kind of squeaks by as a draw your combo pieces kind of card.
Right, or like the big 6/8 guy who I think is actually good enough in some decks, but yeah, like I don't.
Well,
think
the 6/6 for 5 or whatever is pretty good too.
Yeah, so I don't think that they're ever gonna just be like, here's a 1/1 for 2, unless there's some other gimmick with it, right? Like I could see them saying like, here's a vanilla 1/1 for 2. But then you have like another card that says like, if you have 3 vanilla 1/1s, I'm just saying vanilla 1/1s. Like let's call it, not tranquil mud crab, right? Like not enraged mud crab. Let's call it tranquil mud crab. So maybe they're like, here's the pacifist mud crab, right? And then and you're just like, oh, okay, it's a nice, cute, tranquil mud crab. But then maybe they print something else that's like, if you have 3 tranquil mud crabs on the board, transform them into, mega, super, ultra, Voltron mud crab or something, right? Like there would have to be a reason to purposefully print bad cards to then give you some sort of other payoff. Like they'll never just be like,
right,
here's a pile,
I agree. I think on balance, Bog Lurcher is worse than Gerald Forager too.
Well, I mean, that's a good example of a bad card that is around a potential combo, right? Like, you put Lurcher in the Unstoppable Rage combo deck, but, like, you're not, by itself, you're not really ever, like, excited to have Bog Lurcher.
Yeah,
so.
I agree. Indeed. Good show, man.
Yeah, as always.
Just a heads up to everyone. Next week we will also be on Saturday, and then I think we're going to return to our regular Friday schedule. Next Friday is Sandra's birthday, so we'll be going to a concert.
Yeah, Justin is going to do something with his significant other on their day, whereas on my 10th wedding anniversary, I did the podcast because Justin has his priorities straight, and I do not.
Man, I gotta lecture people all day about taking care of themselves. Like, I mean, I don't lecture, but I gotta take care of myself. And I take care of myself by taking care of Sandra.
Well, yeah, I mean that's just truth.
Yeah. Look, if my 20s taught me anything, it's that when I am left in charge of making all the decisions, things go horribly awry.
That's not just my 20s. That's like my entire life.
Fair enough, man. Fair enough.
But yeah, this was good. This was fun.
We stayed on topic
Hopefully.
more tonight than I think ever before.
Yeah, I mean that's it. And I would almost say that besides my whole like I want to murder everybody rant,
Yeah,
we were pretty well on topic.
well done.
Hopefully,
And we talked about peeing outside too.
yeah.
Yeah.
Hopefully, by the time we do this next Saturday, we'll
Yeah.
have some good news, right? Hopefully, we're getting close to that point.
I imagine we will have to. At the very least, we'll have the monthly card to talk about, but I get the impression we will have more to talk about.
Yeah, hopefully, we'll see. Maybe, yeah. I'll talk to you a little bit off, but we'll see what we can do.
Wait, what? Do you know something I don't know?
No, I have some ideas, but
Oh, okay.
yeah.
Because I might know something you don't know. I'm just fucking with you. I don't know anything.
Oh, I mean, I'm sure I know something that you don't know, but I haven't told anyone where that body's buried, so that's just a blanket statement. So
Shit.
but yeah, I'm excited about next week. You're right. At a minimum, we'll have the new monthly reward card to talk about, but
Yeah.
it'll be nice to hopefully have something else to talk about.
Maybe we'll be able to practice with some of our Heroes of Skyrim decks.
Yeah, we could potentially do that. We could potentially do a Halloween themed podcast in costume.
Oh, bro, that's what we're doing.
I mean, like I said, I wanted to talk to you off because I've got some ideas, but
I can never tell when we're off the air. For a couple weeks, I've thought that we were off the air when I start saying like, "Hey, good show" and stuff.
yeah, no, I always tell you, you'll know because I'll say, "And
Yeah.
we're done recording." But me saying it now
I
is
start
part of the conversation.
I start phoning it in like 10 minutes before we go off the air.
I know, but I think people like that. It feels like they get to know the real you and not the radio you.
Fair enough.
But yeah, the good news is we'll have good stuff next week, and
Yes.
this is a good show.
Good work, team. See y'all on the ladder.
There it is.